The day diplomacy died. The chamber was vast and cold, a cathedral of polished stone and sterile light. Delegates from 100 worlds sat in tiered rings around the central floor, their forms alien and strange, chitinous, scaled, luminous, amorphous. The air hummed with translation fields and the low murmur of 1,000 languages folding into one. Ambassador Sarah Chen stood alone in the center. She wore no armor, no weapon, just the simple gray uniform of the Terran diplomatic corps, a small blue flag stitched over her heart. Her hands were clasped behind her back, her posture calm, her face unreadable. She had done this 100 times before. Spoken to councils, defended Earth's interests, negotiated treaties while species twice her age, sneered at the upstart mammals who had barely learned to leave their own solar system, but today felt different. The Zorathi Chancellor loomed above, her on his throne, his scaled face twisted in what might have been amusement or contempt. His species had ruled this sector for millennia, and he wore that history like a crown. Around him, the council watched in silence, some curious, some indifferent. None intervened. "You come here," the Chancellor hissed, his voice amplified across the chamber, demanding fairness, equality, as if your kind has earned such things. Sarah met his eyes without flinching. "We come here asking for what was promised when we joined this council. The same rights, the same protections, the same voice." "And yet," the Chancellor said slowly, rising from his seat, "your kind continues to expand, to build, to arm. Do you think we don't see it? Do you think we don't know what humans are? We are a species that wants peace," Sarah said quietly, "but we will not be bullied into submission." The chamber went silent. The Chancellor descended the steps, his claws clicking against stone. He circled her slowly like a predator savoring the moment. "You misunderstand your position, Ambassador. You are here because we allow it. You speak because we permit it. And if we grow tired of your voice," he stopped in front of her, "we can silence it." Sarah's jaw tightened, but she didn't move, didn't step back. "If you harm me, Earth will—" The Chancellor struck. It was fast, brutal. A plasma blade materialized in his hand, and he drove it through her chest before she could finish the sentence. Her eyes went wide, her mouth opening in shock, and for one terrible moment the only sound in the chamber was the wet hiss of burning flesh. Then she fell. The council erupted. Some delegates gasped. Others turned away. A few laughed. The Chancellor stood over her body, his blade still glowing. "Let this be a lesson," he said, his voice carrying across the chamber. "Humanity has no power here, no protection, no future." He looked around at the assembled delegates, his expression cold. "Dispose of it." And then he walked away. The recording was sent within the hour. It traveled faster than light, riding quantum relays and subspace channels, reaching Earth's datasphere in a matter of minutes. The Galactic Council had meant it as a warning, a broadcast to every human colony and outpost in known space. This is what happens when you overstep. They expected fear, compliance, silence. They got something else. The first protests began in New York. 10,000 people gathered in the old UN Plaza, their faces lit by holographic screens showing Sarah Chen's final moments. They didn't chant slogans or wave signs. They stood in silence, watching the loop play again and again, their grief hardening into something colder. Then Sydney. Then Tokyo. Then Luna City and Mars Prime and the orbital haberings of Titan. Billions of voices rising at once, not in panic but in fury. News feeds exploded. Social networks crashed under the weight of shared outrage. Every human who saw that recording felt the same thing. A line had been crossed. In the halls of the Terran Senate, emergency sessions convened. Generals were summoned. Defense grids activated. Colony governors issued statements of solidarity. And deep in the classified bunkers beneath Geneva, orders were unsealed that hadn't been touched in decades. Humanity had spent 50 years playing nice. 50 years bending over backward to prove they weren't the barbarians the galaxy thought they were. 50 years building in secret just in case. Just in case the galaxy decided diplomacy was over. Within 6 hours of Sarah Chen's murder, every Terran diplomat was recalled. Every embassy shuttered. Every trade agreement suspended. The withdrawal was silent, coordinated, and absolute. And then at exactly 800 Terran Standard Time, the message went out. 12 words, broadcast on every frequency, sent to every species, burned into the datasphere where no one could erase it. We are coming. We will not stop. We will not forgive. The Zorathi Chancellor laughed when he heard it. The Council dismissed it as bluster. A few elder species murmured warnings, but they were ignored. None of them understood what they had done. None of them knew what humans became when you took away their hope. When humanity wakes, the first ships appeared 3 weeks later. They came out of jump space at the edge of Zorathi territory, silent and dark, their hulls matte, black, and angular, designed to swallow light rather than reflect it. No running lights, no transponder signals, just cold metal and the faint shimmer of active stealth fields. The Zorathi Border Patrol detected them too late. By the time the alarm went out, the human fleet had already crossed into the system, moving with a precision that spoke of years of planning. 18 dreadnoughts, 40 cruisers, 100 frigates, and twice that many support craft. And behind them the carrier groups, vast, mobile fortresses carrying swarms of fighters and bombers that moved like schools of predatory fish. The patrol station sent one transmission before it was vaporized. They're here. The Galactic Council convened an emergency session, their chamber now tense with something they hadn't felt in centuries. Fear. This is madness, one delegate hissed. They're attacking a council member state. This violates every treaty, They withdrew from those treaties, another interrupted. The moment they recalled their diplomats, they were no longer bound. Then we sanction them, blockade their systems. Cut off with what? The voice came from the back of the chamber, cold and tired. It belonged to an elder Drexian ambassador, one of the few species older than the Zorathi. Do any of you actually know what humanity has been building while we weren't watching? Silence. They came to us 50 years ago with colony ships and mining rigs, primitive fusion drives, chemical propellants. We laughed at them, called them children playing with fireworks. The ambassador's multiple eyes glinted in the dim light, and while we laughed, they learned. Reverse engineered our technology, improved it, built entire fleets and systems we never bothered to chart because we thought they were worthless. That's impossible, the Zorathi representative snarled. Our intelligence, your intelligence, the Drexian said quietly, told you that murdering their ambassador would break them. How is that working out? The chamber erupted in argument, but it didn't matter. Words meant nothing now. The war had already begun. The Zorathi High Command expected a siege, a blockade perhaps, or targeted strikes against military installations. They had defenses for that, orbital platforms, minefields, automated defense grids that had protected their homeworld for 1,000 years. They did not expect the humans to ignore all of it. The Terran fleet didn't slow down, didn't stop to engage the defense platforms or clear the mines. They just accelerated, burning straight through the outer system at velocities that should have torn their ships apart. Kinetic barriers flared as debris hammered their hulls. Point defense lasers carved through incoming missiles. And when the orbital platforms opened fire, the human ships returned it with weapons the Zorathi had never seen before. Rail cannons that fired tungsten slugs at fractional light speed. Plasma lances that could cut a cruiser in half. And missiles, thousands of missiles, and each one guided by an AI smart enough to learn, adapt, and hunt. The Zorathi defense grid lasted 11 minutes. Then the fleet was through, burning toward the homeworld, and there was nothing left to stop them. Chancellor Varn stood on the balcony of his palace, watching the sky burn. Streaks of light carved across the atmosphere as human drop pods fell like rain. Defense turrets fired desperately into the swarm, destroying dozens, but there were thousands more. They hit the ground in waves, disgorging troops in powered armor that moved too fast, hit too hard and didn't stop. Behind him, his advisors screamed into communication devices, issuing orders that no one would follow. The military was in collapse. Half the orbital defense stations were gone. The planetary shields had failed in 6 sectors, and still the humans came. Chancellor, one of his aides, gasped. The humans are broadcasting. I don't care what they're saying. Sir, you need to hear this. Varn turned, his eyes cold. The aide activated a holodisplay and a human face appeared. A woman, older, wearing the uniform of a Terran admiral. Her expression was carved from stone. This is Admiral Zhao of the Terran Federation, she said, her voice calm and measured. We are here for Chancellor Varn and the members of the council who sanctioned the murder of Ambassador Sarah Chen. Surrender them, and we will limit our actions to military targets. Refuse, and we will consider every structure, every ship, every installation complicit in her death. A pause. You have 1 hour. The transmission ended. Varn stared at the blank screen, his claws digging into the stone railing. Around him, his palace shook as explosions walked closer. Somewhere in the distance, a defense tower collapsed in a pillar of flame. "Get me a shuttle," he said quietly. "Sir, get me a shuttle, now." But when he reached the landing pad, there were no shuttles. No escape. Just human soldiers in black armor, their weapons trained on him. Their visors reflecting his terrified face, and standing among them, unarmed and calm, was a woman in a gray diplomatic uniform. "Ambassador Torres," she said simply. "I'm here to accept your surrender." Varn's legs gave out. He fell to his knees, his breath coming in ragged gasps. "Please." You should have thought of that," Torres said, her voice soft, "before you killed one of ours." The trial lasted 3 days. It was broadcast across the galaxy, every moment recorded and transmitted to every species that had ever looked down on humanity. Chancellor Varn and 12 council members stood before a Terran tribunal, charged with murder, conspiracy, and crimes against sapient life. They were found guilty. The executions were quick, clinical, no theatrics, no speeches, just justice, delivered with the same cold efficiency that had won the war. And when it was done, Admiral Zhao addressed the galaxy one last time. "Let it be known," she said, her voice steady, "that humanity does not seek conquest. We do not seek domination. But we will not be victims. We will not be silenced. And if you raise your hand against us," she paused, her eyes hard, "we will raise ours in return." The Terran fleet withdrew a week later, leaving behind occupation forces and a new government. The Zorathi homeworld was intact, its people alive, but its power was broken, its arrogance shattered, and across the galaxy, species that had once mocked humanity now watched the skies, wondering if they would be next. They never forgot Sarah Chen, and they never underestimated Earth again.